Hey everyone! So excited to share with you this new story, I'm Stanning the Prince. To give you guys a head start, our female lead here wrote a fanfic based on the prince, and her life became chaotic after that. You guys will love how humorous and romantic this is. Long ago in the Empire of Ludech, the emperor married the eldest daughter of the most powerful family, Espalindo, and gave birth to twins, the crown prince and a princess. And shortly after, he married a second empress, the young daughter of the Schwandel family, known for their military strength, and gave birth to the second prince. However, the second empress was assassinated soon after. The culprit was not found, and rumors spread, dethroning the crown prince and transferring power to the second prince. Now back to the present, the knights, including the first prince, REBORN Espalindo, are now back from a battle, and you can hear the crowd whispering bad rumors about him, including the rumors of the second empress's assassination. While having a parade, one young kid runs towards the prince, and instead of insulting him, she calls him Oppa and asks for a book sign. And all of the other ladies start fangirling as well. Can't blame them, I would too. Meanwhile, in the countryside, Angela works as a writer for a living, and one of her dreams is to go to the city to meet the prince. Fangirl alert! She meets with her other friends, and they enthusiastically talk about the prince. She is shocked after the girls reveal they read the best-selling book and became fans. Angela freaks out, runs off with the book, and is confused how the fanfic she wrote long ago is now a book. Realizing it must be the merchant guy who published it, when suddenly the Imperial Knight came knocking, arresting her for being a spy. That same morning, the Royal Council is having a meeting and starts talking about the rumors regarding the first prince's merciless expeditions, when Princess Hoya suddenly walks out, expressing her disgust with their discussion. The princess is having a headache because of REBORN's bad reputation when she overhears two ladies discussing his name, which she confronts. But to her surprise, they are actually praising how good the prince is in the book. Meanwhile, the prince is trying to understand the sudden outburst from the townspeople earlier by reading the said popular book. And unlike most, this enrages him, and he plans to kill the author. Uh-oh. That evening, Angela is inside the Imperial carriage, all chained up, when luckily, the door breaks open. She suddenly recalls being sold and ending up in a carriage before, and wonders if she ran away now, would she meet the prince like that time? Ooh, looks like they already had a connection when they were young. She then overhears the knights talking about her execution and has no choice but to jump out of the carriage, when suddenly, a masked man catches her. But unlike any fairy tale, he tosses her back in the carriage and instructs her to wait. The way she was thrown back in? I can't stop laughing at this. The masked man then begins assassinating all of the knights, and they realize it is the prince who is attacking them. One knight is trying to escape when a hooded man appears out of nowhere and kills him. Angela, on the other hand, witnesses all of the killing and faints out. After all the actions, the hooded man exposes himself and explains that Princess Hoya gave him a secret mission, but the prince shrugs it off and tries to finish Angela while she's sleeping. His personal guard tries to stop him and persuades him. After a while, the prince agrees and brings her back to their mansion. The next morning, the Imperial Knights, together with the General Chancellor and Crown Prince, investigate the ambush. It's actually the Chancellor who tries to kill Angela, the author, but now things are getting more complicated. While the Crown Prince notices how skilled the killers are, which interests him. Angela is now awake, thinking she's still dreaming after fainting, or is she? She realizes that maybe this is not a dream, but the afterlife, murdered by the masked man. She tries to assess what happened to her and blames herself for having written a fan fiction about the prince who had helped her before. She then begins to recall the masked man's gaze and concludes that it could be the prince himself. After making a noise, a maid assigned to her shows up, addressing her as a scholar and welcoming her to Duke REBORN's mansion. When she realized she's at the prince's mansion, she forgot about the possibility that he was the masked guy who killed the knights. Manhwa then knocks and addresses her as a scholar as well. After that, Angela changes her clothes and meets her bias. The prince. Her stares annoys the prince. The princess arrives, sits beside Angela, and she starts fangirling again. The twins start discussing when the prince complains that the book contains a kissing scene between him and Manhwa, making the princess burst out laughing. Angela tries to change the topic and asks the prince if he is the one who saved her from the masked man, and to her surprise, the prince bluntly confirms that he is the masked man who tried to kill her. He warns her while giving her a sinister look, contrary to her expectations. The princess cuts him off and starts explaining that they need her to make a sequel to the book. She then informs Angela that the reason the royal family is trying to kill her is because her book has a significant impact on public opinion, which poses a threat to the crown prince's faction since it's improving the Espalindo family reputation. She offers her a contract to protect her while she continues to write fanfics, to which Angela agrees. This stresses the prince, but seeing his twin looking lively matters more. After that, Angela and her maid go out to the city to buy her new clothes. The maid explains that she's new and is excited to serve her, and off they go. The maid reminds her to address her as Lizzie and to speak comfortably to her, making Angela recall Manhwa telling her to act like a scholar because it is a respectable position and to be more confident. And so she's trying. Lizzie begins chatting about the book while walking, which reminds her of how different the prince is from the past, giving her shivers. They enter a clothing store and begin looking for clothes. Lizzie sees a designer dress that she thinks will look good on Angela, but the clerk stops her from touching it and starts belittling them. When Lizzie starts sobbing instead of fighting back, Angela feels forced to do something. She confidently grabs the mannequin, tells Lizzie to do the same, and hands the clerk the Duke REBORN signed document. She buys the clothes and tells her to never disrespect them, humiliating the clerk. They leave the store wearing their new clothes, convincing herself that the Duke is generous, so he'll understand. While Lizzie walks off to check the crowd, someone grabs Angela and takes her to a dark alley. She attacks the guy and is about to run away when she realizes it is the merchant. The two start blaming each other for the situation, and instead of apologizing to Angela, he takes his knife and threatens to reveal herself as the author. Angela fights back, shoves the knife away, and runs towards the crowd, revealing that the author is here. The people start to surround the merchant, asking for his autograph, allowing Angela the opportunity to flee. She becomes terrified upon discovering the Imperial Knights and tries to run, but she slips and the Crown Prince catches her. She sees that the person who caught her is wearing the Imperial crest, making her panic more. She covers her face and dashes off. The Imperial Knights have captured the merchant, who claims the author is a blonde woman. The Crown Prince then figures out that it is the girl who ran away. In one of the quiet alleys, Lizzie is treating Angela's wound while apologizing to her. She discovers how timid Lizzie is and worries that if she runs away now, she'll end up as a fugitive like the merchant. So she decides to stay and continue writing her fanfic since the Espalindo family will keep her safe. But maybe not the prince? Meanwhile, back in the Duke's mansion, the prince hears that the Crown Prince is on his way, so he tries to leave. Manhwa then notices something gleaming and counters the sword of an Imperial Knight. The knight informs the prince that the Crown Prince is visiting, so the Duke needs to stay and apologizes for his surprise greeting. What a psycho! Angela is shocked to learn that Lizzie just innocently dragged her outside despite her permission to do so. She then remembers Manhwa begging her to stay home and decides to hurriedly return to the mansion. Meanwhile, the Duke and the Crown Prince are having tea together. REBORN is uneasy with the Crown Prince's royal guard and demands that he be sent away, to which he agrees. He then advises Frederick to discipline his knight while giving off a dark aura, but the Crown Prince responds that it was just a joke. After that, the Crown Prince informs REBORN about the ambush and shows him the montage of the author he saw in the village earlier. REBORN laughs while checking the montage, but feigns ignorance when the Crown Prince asks him about the lady he saw, since he thinks Angela is in her room. Manhwa checks on Angela and discovers she is not in her room. To his surprise, Bourbon follows him and examines the rooms as well. REBORN seems embarrassed when the Crown Prince begins discussing the book, and he begins dragging the prince away. The Crown Prince then invites him to attend an event at the royal palace and whispers a warning not to let him capture the author, or it will be the end of his family, which surprises the Duke. The Duke wonders how the Crown Prince figured out that they have the author when she should be hiding in her room. He glances at Manhwa and realizes that the girl must have run away. Bourbon then interrupts, reporting that he saw an empty ladies' room and suspects the Duke of hiding something. With no warning, the Duke takes the Crown Prince's sword, lunges at Bourbon, and grabs him by the neck. Bourbon attempts to ask for the Crown Prince's help, but receives no reaction at all, and thus accepts his death. Lizzie then suddenly yells when the macaron that Angela was holding gets stabbed by the sword, stopping the Duke from killing Bourbon, since he did not expect Angela to return. The situation gets more complicated when she sees that the Imperial Knight is there. The Crown Prince informs him that the girl is the one he saw in the streets, and the Duke explains that she's a scholar and the assistant of their librarian. The Crown Prince did not pry and simply apologized for Bourbon's attitude, adding that he and his scholar should attend the event before leaving. The Duke sits down in exhaustion, then recalls his past with his twin, arguing about how no one will ever come back for them, when suddenly Angela, whom he thought would not return, gives him a box of macarons and asks him if he's all right. Everyone anticipates the Duke's anger, but instead, he smiles at her and simply instructs her to rest. Looks like his walls are slowly breaking. It's the third day after the commotion, and everything looks so peaceful. Angela is currently at work at the library, where she hopes to be able to write in peace and quiet, but is now having writer's block. She used to receive inspiration from paparazzi photos she had back at home, but now she can't even catch a glimpse of the prince in his mansion. She's still surprised to think that the Duke's personality is so different from what she believes, but she's happy when the Duke shows her his laugh. She decides to go to the prince's office, but Manhwa's restless face greets her. Manhwa informs her that the Duke is out for a meeting, which is why he's working in his stead. He then asks Angela about her progress with her fanfic, but is surprised when she asks if he has any paparazzi pictures of the prince, from which she can get inspiration. Manhwa suggests a solution. Since he thinks that the Duke seems fine with Angela around now, he asks her to deliver his paperwork to the Duke alone when he arrives. Angela agrees to help Manhwa lessen his work. Oh, this duo. That night, the Duke arrives at the back door looking exhausted. The head maid sees him and is surprised to see all of the Oppa dolls and other fan gifts coming out of his hood. Poor REBORN had to witness a lot of fangirls during the meeting, I think. Look at that traumatized face! Well, that morning after their meeting, the general approaches him, hands him a paparazzi drawing of him with the Crown Prince having tea, and advises him to get rid of the paparazzi. The Duke is pissed and advises him to mind his own business and just focus on his swordsmanship. When the general is about to leave through the gate, the commoners get their chance and rush in to meet the Duke, stuffing him with gifts and hugging him. The general is surprised at how many people adore the Duke, and even overhears some people bluntly show their dissatisfaction about the royal family, comparing them to the book. The Duke thinks that what the author wrote is dangerous. Meanwhile, the head maid goes to visit Manhwa to alert him that the Duke is back and is looking for the scholar Angela, whom he wishes to kill. Manhwa gets up, thinking that they are in trouble. Can't take them seriously. Look at Manhwa's face. Angela, bringing all the documents, is nervous and excited at the same time to be with the Duke alone. The Duke is still reading the book when Angela knocks and opens the door. He is not expecting Angela to enter his room, making him spit his tea while she's just enjoying seeing him in pajamas. As she sits beside him, she tries to have some conversations, but the Duke tells her to get straight to her main point, and in a serious voice, she asks him if he can remember her, and that they both took care of Shuran together. The Duke recalls his childhood friend as they take good care of their bird, Shuran, but also how the girl cries and flees when she hears of the assassination of the second empress. He then grabs Angela by her cheeks, moves closely to her, and asks her what she meant. But instead of an answer, he receives a punch to the gut. Look at his confused expression! Angela stands up, apologizing and explaining she got too shy. The Duke then sends her away, but tells her that he'll visit tomorrow so they can talk again, making Angela all happy again. Manhwa rushes in, hitting Angela in the face, but is surprised to see that the Duke did not harm her. Manhwa, actually, it's the other way around. Back at the palace, the general walks into the Crown Prince's room and grabs him by his collar. The Crown Prince innocently asks if something happened when the general tries to hit him in the face. After seeing his scared face, the general releases him and starts nagging like he's his father, then instructs him to take care of the author immediately. The Crown Prince then shares that he discovered the author living in REBORN's mansion had already pressured them to attend the party and intends to win her over. Meanwhile, Angela is having tea on her balcony and thinks REBORN must have remembered her, when suddenly, a mouse sneaks in, and her reflexes tell her to kick it, and to her surprise, she sees a man in a tree near her. Poor mouse! The Duke and Manhwa hear Angela shouting from her bedroom, and they both find her holding a man hanging from the veranda. She informs him that she caught a pervert and quickly explains how she caught him. He becomes aware of his situation and decides to let go of his bag and run while Manhwa jumps to chase him. Look at the maids enjoying this! The Duke checks the intruder's bag and confirms that it is a paparazzi, not an assassin. Manhwa comes back, apologizing because he had lost him. While the Duke is thinking about what to do, Angela notices one of the paparazzi's drawings and is shocked when she recognizes the art style is identical to the drawing in her room. And she decides to catch him immediately since she already saw his face. The Duke thinks it's dangerous, so he decides to catch the paparazzi with her, which surprises Angela. He then orders Manhwa to take a rest as they go their way in search of the paparazzi. When they reach the village, the Duke is so cautious and orders her to hide her face, while in her mind, they are on a secret date. She notices how the Duke is always on guard, thinking this is all because of the bad rumors he has, then persuades him to search in the crowd and encourages him not to worry because there are more people who like him. The Duke is very wary of their surroundings, and as a result, he overreacts when the fireworks begin. He is really on the edge of exhaustion from trying to protect her when he notices how Angela is happily watching the fireworks. Angela shows him how much people love him now, but the Duke considers them as an eyesore and orders her to leave somewhere quieter. They are now in a bar, and when they overhear some big guy talking trash about him and how people forget he's merciless, she tries to defend him, but REBORN confirms they are right. He cannot trust the people switching sides so quickly when the same people have wished him to die before. Hearing this got Angela mad, claiming all of his past rumors were baseless. But the Duke confronts her, asking what if the accusations that he murdered the Second Empress were true. When she doesn't respond, the Duke assumes she's the same as the others. But the truth is, she's just seriously trying to recall why she trusts him. Suddenly, a young kid raises her hood and she recognizes him as the paparazzi. The Duke grabs him but escapes as he announces to everyone that he is with Prince REBORN. As a result of the growing crowds, Angela is forced to pursue the paparazzi on her own. Angela catches up to him and recognizes him as Blen, who has stalked the prince for years and explains that she's a huge fan of his drawings. Now Blen starts to lower his defense with her and they start chatting, not knowing that just above them, an assassin is planning to kill her. Good thing our prince shows up. The Duke starts eavesdropping on Angela's and the paparazzi's conversation while subduing the assassin. Angela asks Blen if some of his drawings are made up, but is glad when Blen strongly tells her that all of his drawings are not forged and he only sketches things he really saw. She remembers the sketches with the prince showing his good nature, and Angela is relieved that it is all true, as she almost stops standing the prince after seeing how he never denies the rumors. However, she now wishes to protect him from any rumors, and the prince beams upon hearing this. Meanwhile, the assassin, seeing that the prince has relaxed his guard, launches an attack. Wow, he really thought he could? He orders the assassin to deliver a warning to the general that if he ever tries another trick, he'll not stand for it, then let him go. Angela, on the other hand, witnesses everything, asks him if he plans to explain what she just saw, but again, knowing the prince, he just says nothing. Now that she's beginning to understand him, she believes he's protecting her and tells him she'll start looking for hidden meanings in his actions because she believes in him. The assassin happens to see Bourbon and informs him of the warning message REBORN wants to send, but to his surprise, Bourbon stabs, killing him. The next day at the mansion, Manhwa is surprised to see that the Duke has shown mercy to the paparazzi who sold his drawing to them. Angela agrees and can't stop blushing, thinking how cool the prince was that night. Manhwa finds it amusing that Angela has a sincere affection for the prince when suddenly, one of the servants knocks on the door, announcing the early arrival of Princess Hoya, which is unexpected. Princess Hoya chats with Angela and asks for an update regarding the sequel. Angela informs her that she is making all the preparations. After speaking with Angela, the princess expresses her disappointment in both the prince and Manhwa for failing to inform her of what is going on. The crown prince's sudden visit and the banquet invitation. She continues to question the Duke about why he is keeping everything from her despite their promise to keep no secrets. Angela feels the tension and interrupts them, explaining that it is she who nags the prince to go to the banquet so she can get inspiration for her writings. Trying to bridge the two, she says that she also witnessed the prince, and Manhwa simply became too busy to tell her. That somehow works, but now that the princess starts questioning her about her cover during the banquet, the prince notices how nervous Angela actually is, and tells his twin that they will prepare her for the banquet. Angela confidently says that she only needs 3 days to get ready. The Duke personally trains her, and they do it again and again until perfection. The Duke knows all the effort Angela is putting into their rehearsals and tries to help her, but remembers Princess Hoya's advice that if anything goes wrong, they will have to dispose of her, and she warns him not to get attached. After 5 hours, she finally learns how to correct her posture, but that is only the beginning. She then goes on to study everything she needs to know to be a true scholar. That night, the Duke hears that Angela and the maids were meant to be having fun at the festival, but she is left behind since she still needs to study. The Duke feels bad and visits her in the library. Surprised to see the Duke, Angela's nose starts bleeding again, and she explains that she still has a lot to study. When the Duke sees that she has written something about wanting to dance in her paper, he makes excuses and teaches her to dance. Both are now in position, and the Duke reminds her that he's just teaching her in case she'll be asked to dance during the banquet. Reasons. Angela keeps stomping on his feet while he keeps dodging, making her laugh. She is more relaxed now and starts sharing that she began writing her novel because she doesn't want to forget her wonderful dreams about him, but she now feels as if she's experiencing the dream. He then decides to use both his hands since she keeps on hitting his feet, smiles at Angela, and instructs her to focus. Looks like our prince here is starting to soften. Her dancing improves significantly as the prince leads her, and they continue to twirl and turn. Look how beautiful they dance under the moonlight while papers flutter around them. Hey paparazzi, now's the time to get all those sketches. The day of the banquet has come, and in the palace, Princess Garnet recalls how terrified she was when she heard that she was to be engaged to the first prince, but was relieved when her engagement was changed to the gentle-looking second prince. And now, she can't wait to become the empress. Meanwhile, Angela is ecstatic for the banquet, but the prince is trembling, clearly nervous about the event. Manhwa reveals that the prince hasn't gone to the palace in a long time, especially for a party. The prince notices how the two are talking about him, gets kicked out of the carriage, and off he goes. Angela got so used to the prince's attitude, pats Manhwa and simply asks him for a tour. Manhwa, on the other hand, overhears nobles discussing the tea party and deduces that this is why the Duke wants them to arrive later. Princess Garnet and the other ladies are having a tea party, and they begin addressing her as the crown princess before discussing her marriage, when suddenly, one of the ladies starts sharing that the first prince is coming to the banquet, which surprises her. Is she scared? She then leaves the tea party first when she suddenly bumps into the first prince, REBORN. The princess is surprised when the first prince bows and greets her first, which entertains onlookers, and even the general sees this. Looking all close, the princess tries to lean in and ask if he's unwell, but gets coldly rejected when she reaches out to touch his face, as it may cause misunderstanding among the people watching. Even so, she looks happy while thinking his hands are soft. Okay? While guarding the crown prince's quarters, Bourbon overhears the general instructing the prince to propose to the princess during the banquet. After that, the two then run into the hallway together, where the princess greets the crown prince but is only met with silence, which aggravates her. As she continues to walk, she mulls over the treatment she received and the fact that she'll be marrying him instead of Prince REBORN, who has higher status, when she suddenly slips off the steps and is caught by who she thinks is REBORN, who smiles at her, making her all blush. It's actually his twin, Princess Hoya, laughing at what she just did. She walks inside REBORN's room and discovers him sitting in a corner, all gloomy. She attempts to make a joke, but when she notices how anxious her brother is, she hugs him. Aww, loving their cute brother-sister relationship. Meanwhile, the crown prince looks gloomy as well, but notices that Bourbon is following him. He informs him that he needs to go back, when he suddenly sees Angela outside, which cheers him up. As the first prince, REBORN Espalindo, and Princess Hoya enter the banquet hall, he begins to search for Angela. He notices Mano, but not her. After a while, Princess Garnet Osley and the crown prince make their grand entrance, and she smiles at the Duke as she recalls the stairwell episode. When Princess Hoya realizes the princess is the same girl she jokingly flirted with earlier, she knows she has made a terrible mistake. The crown prince is giving his welcoming speech when Angela walks into the hall through the main entrance rather than the side door, catching everyone's interest. She notices all of the glances, yet manages to walk elegantly and approach Mano, gaining relief from the twin while she continues fangirling over REBORN's look. Priorities! When the dance begins, many have tried to dance with Angela, but Mano scares them away while she looks at the Duke, realizing how different their worlds are. Meanwhile, Princess Hoya confronts the Duke if he becomes attached to the scholar. As the twins are talking, the crown prince approaches Angela and invites her to dance, surprising everyone. Princess Hoya quickly stops the Duke as he was about to interrupt the prince, while Angela hesitates but complies, since it would be strange to decline the crown prince. Although Angela is nervous to dance with the prince, she remembers how the Duke taught her how to dance, and the two are soon dancing gracefully. The Duke feels awkward watching them dance and decides to go out instead. Meanwhile, Angela feels so proud of her dancing and wants to brag about it to the Duke, but when she looks, he isn't there. She got distracted and lost her balance, causing her shoe to slip off. The crown prince quickly saves her by covering her shoe with his cape and asking whether they should stop, to which she agrees while thanking him. She then informs Mano that she's going to get some fresh air to calm herself down. Meanwhile, the general is watching this, thinking the crown prince is out of control, and plans to assassinate the author. While outside, Angela is trying to figure out why the crown prince asked her for a dance. Maybe he's trying to get information from her? But she can't forget the crown prince's kindness earlier, helping her hide her worn-out shoe as well as his sad expression. With all the thinking, her thoughts go back to the Duke while she watches the fireworks. She is shocked when she notices him down on the veranda and wonders if he's also thinking about her. As Angela is about to call the Duke, Princess Garnet shows up, and to her surprise, the princess suddenly hugs him. Excuse me? Did she just touch Angela's oba? Angela hides herself, confused or perhaps hurt as to why the two are hugging. And as if sent from below, one of the ladies approaches her, sensing that something is going on. Angela doesn't want the lady to see the Duke in that situation, thinks quickly, then yells loudly, appreciating the fireworks to distract the lady while the princess quickly pushes the Duke away and hides. Moments later, The lady looks out at the veranda and sees the Duke alone. Safe. But Angela is unsure whether she did the right thing. As the Duke is about to leave, Princess Garnet apologizes for pushing him, but to her dismay, the Duke seems cold to her. She grabs him and asks why he's acting differently when he has feelings for her as well, but the Duke, as confused as she is, bluntly denies it. The Duke leaves the puzzled princess, who is now trying to figure out what just happened, and remembers the Duke's twin sister, Princess Hoya. Realizing that it could have been the twin princess who played a trick on her in the staircase. And speaking of the trickster, inside the banquet, Princess Hoya orders Manhwa to do something for her while looking for Angela. Somewhere in a corner, Angela sits down and tries to understand what just happened when the door opens and she recognizes the paparazzi in disguise. Afraid of her reporting him, he bribes her with his sketches. She smiles as she looks at the sketches, yet at some point, she looks sad. As they are talking, Manhwa is secretly watching them while unsheathing his sword. Angela and Blen argue about the sketches, unaware of Manhwa's presence. He watches them before unsheathing his sword when the Duke shows up. Manhwa's blade almost strikes him, and without flinching, the Duke sternly asks if his sister orders him to raise his sword to Angela and questions his loyalty. Angela, while looking at the sketch of the Duke, recalls how indifferent he was earlier, but then remembers how she promised him that she'd believe in him. And now that she's resolved her feelings, she runs to look for him. Meanwhile, the Duke and Manhwa are still discussing his actions. While kneeling and trembling, Manhwa asks for forgiveness and explains Princess Hoya leaves the decision to him, but admits that it is his choice to raise his sword against Angela. He adds that he notices how anxious Angela is throughout the night, and that they can't afford her to waver since it will be dangerous to their family. They both hear Angela coming, and so the Duke quickly commands Manhwa to collect himself and report to Princess Hoya. Angela cheerfully greets the two and then requests the Duke for a talk, to which he agrees. Manhwa still trembles after they go, regretting his actions. In the garden, Angela starts being a chatterbox when suddenly the Duke holds her by the shoulders. She blushingly closes her eyes, unaware that he is only arranging her dress. She feels terrible when she misinterprets his actions, and the prince tries not to laugh at her. Blushing! The prince is blushing! The Duke is feeling off, and he's not sure if it's because he's back at the palace after such a long time. The day he was removed as crown prince comes to mind, as does an argument he had with Hoya over him going to his special place and a certain girl resembling Angela. Angela musters all of her confidence to ask the Duke's thought about her dance with the crown prince and his relationship with the future crown princess. But as she expected, the Duke said nothing. She shrugs it off, not wanting to pry anymore, and continues to blabber while the Duke's mind is still occupied with his past, about how everyone left him before. Perhaps the reason why he's hesitating to trust Angela. After a while, she decides to go inside, but the Duke grabs her and for the first time, tries to explain. Angela cuts him off, telling him she can wait, then out of nowhere, asks him for a dance. He was taken aback, but then smiled and agreed. Back at the banquet hall, Princess Hoya explains to Manhwa that she only tests him if both he and his brother really trust Angela. While the crown prince appears to be in a bad mood, he did not announce his engagement, disobeying the general. Meanwhile, the two keep on dancing while Blen finally draws them together. What a lovely sight. In the crown prince's dream, he saw how scared his younger self was of obeying all the commands of his uncle. When he awakens, he feels exhausted after disobeying his uncle and doubts that if his uncle will ever let him be. He decides to go out for some air by himself. At the Duke's library, the Duke checks on Angela, but is met by piles of merch disguised as her and finds the note she left for the librarian. Busted! Angela actually sneaks out with Lizzie to stroll around the village. And while they walk, they see a banquet show where the people impersonate the Duke, Crown Prince, and even her, giving her the inspiration to work harder on her sequel. As they were watching the show, Lizzie asked her about her dance with the prince, but her mind wandered to when she danced with the Duke. Suddenly, a man approaches them, and she nearly screams as she recognizes him as the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince and Angela make it out of the crowd safely, thanks to Lizzie's help. Angela asks the Crown Prince why he's out alone, and he casually mentions how he can't relax and how he always feels tied up in the castle. But Angela notices how trapped he is, much like the Duke, who's like a bird trapped in a cage. When the Crown Prince is about to leave, she invites him to have a short walk nearby, thinking maybe this could help him even a bit. Happily, he agrees, as it's his first time being invited for a walk. The Duke searches for Angela in the town and presents her montage to the townspeople. When the people tell him about the uproar earlier, he suspects the General Chancellor's men have her and rushes to find her. Meanwhile, Angela and the Crown Prince are now on a street where they sell the prince's merch, which is not part of her plan for their walk. She tries to distract the Crown Prince from all the merchandise, and fortunately finds a dart game nearby. The Crown Prince follows her lead and they play darts while she begins to ask him some random questions, and even wins the jackpot. It looks like the Crown Prince simply enjoys listening to her. After their game, the Crown Prince prepares to leave and thanks her for showing him around, when the Duke sees them from afar and tries to attack the man he thinks is an assassin with a merch. Only later realizing that it was the Crown Prince, causing another commotion. After the Crown Prince leaves, Angela dashes to the Duke's location, where a drunk man throws an egg at him for making a scene early in the morning. Angela covers him with his hood and consoles him by telling him that the people have just misunderstood him for breaking the crates. As soon as the Crown Prince arrives at the palace, the first report he receives is about the general. When he enters his room, the general and his bedroom guards are already there. The general starts to informally treat him again, grabs Bourbon's sword, and kills the guards, telling him it is his fault they need to die and teaching him a lesson not to act on his own. Bourbon receives a warning to behave as well. Back at the Duke's mansion, the Duke keeps rejecting Angela's scripts, adding that she should not include the part where the protagonist dances with the Crown Prince. I smell jealousy. You guys smell it? After the Duke leaves, Manhwa reads her script and tries to help her by giving her some notes. He admits the story is good, but it only portrays that the Duke is someone who isn't interested in the throne. This confuses her, and so Manhwa shares that back when he was still a commoner and the Duke was still the Crown Prince, he was known to be a disgrace to the knights. They called him a dirty street rat. But the only person who acknowledged him was REBORN, who appoints him as the personal knight of the next emperor. And so he explains that she should portray the Duke as a man who's confident in his position, which amazes Angela after learning this new information. After that, the Imperial Knight delivers an order to bring Espelindo's scholar to the Imperial estate. Manhwa tries to refuse since the Duke has not returned yet, but luckily, Princess Hoya arrives and offers to bring Angela with her. Angela feels nervous sitting with the other scholars and tries to ask for help from Princess Hoya, but like her twin, she doesn't budge. When the Crown Prince arrives, they begin the meeting and explain that they found a document in the palace written in the Vestia royal family code. And to avoid any misunderstanding against the allied country, they are ordered to decipher the code within 5 days before showing it to the Princess of Vestia, Princess Garnet. Angela is included in the group since they inform everyone that she is from Vestia in order to hide her identity, and so the general expects great assistance from her. He also raises suspicions about how this incident involving Vestia is happening the moment she arrives, to which Princess Hoya immediately responds, leading to a confrontation. Meanwhile, the Duke returns to his mansion, and Manhwa reports that Princess Hoya escorts Angela to the palace, which he calmly receives. Well, just to discover, the Duke has already left. Angela is now roaming around the palace, trying to find a solution to the code. Her plan is to chat with people while collecting information. While pondering her next step, the Crown Prince approaches her and admits he is the one who gave the orders recommending her for the duty. He then invites her for a walk on a mountain nearby. Angela declines at first, but realizes maybe he can help since he's closest to the Vestian princess. When she's just about to take his hand, the Duke interrupts. Seeing how people began to speak negatively about the Duke, Angela doesn't hesitate to decline the Crown Prince's invitation and ran toward him. While hunting, the Crown Prince thinks Angela is his brother's weakness since he came to the palace alone just for her. He remembers his uncle's order to dispose of her and believes it will surely be a huge blow to Espelindo's family. But he recalls the way Angela looks at him with concern, just like his mother's, making him waver. The Duke notices how quickly she adapts to the people, and since they're in the palace, he addresses her as a scholar, which amuses her. While she's busy teasing him, the Duke notices the knights talking badly about him. So he tries to hide her and puts himself in the way so the knights can't see her, and he whispers, admitting he's worried, since she has been disappearing for a long time, making her all shy again. She tries to hide herself from the passerby, thinking they might misunderstand how close they are now. She thanks him for worrying, then runs away, leaving her notes behind. Inside the castle, a mysterious lady is hidden and observing the scholars, concerned about how they obtained her document, and she is surprised to see Angela with them. She tries to hide, exposing herself to be Princess Garnet. Angela is still thinking about how the Duke says something that reveals that he probably recalls her, then accidentally enters a dark room. She then finds the document and is about to read it when she hears voices approaching and hides in the closet. Meanwhile, Princess Garnet, who is following Angela, also hides from the knights and finds herself on the balcony with nowhere to hide when the Duke quickly grabs her from behind just in time when the knight opens the door to check. They are now hiding in the balcony's side railing, and the Duke wonders why he saw his twin with the general, but he dismisses his concern since he trusts her. When Princess Garnet gets a glimpse of his face, she thinks it's Princess Hoya pulling a trick on her again, so she shoves him away before she realizes she's still hanging from the balcony. She is about to fall when the Duke saves her and falls into the water instead. Just then, she realizes he's actually the Duke. Hottie. Inside the room as they are talking, Angela recognizes the voice of Princess Hoya and sees the general through the little hole. The princess knows that he's plotting something to drag Vestia into the war. She wants to know their plans, but the general wants something in return for the information he will give. Angela is surprised when Princess Hoya tells the general that she will give him the Duke's head at the next battle. The general is not taking Princess Hoya seriously, but the princess continues to say that her twin means nothing if it is for the sake of her family. This does not interest the general since the Duke's position is not a threat to them, and her killing the Duke will only affect their own family. She then cuts her hair, looking more like the Duke, and tells him that she plans to declare her death and kill REBORN to take his place. She goes on to say that she knows it's not the position he's concerned about, but REBORN himself. The general is now all ears for the roleplay she's planning, but questions what will happen to her position. And to his surprise, she says that a princess is only a hindrance and not needed. This time, the general thinks she is serious, and before he leaves, he tells her that they need to discuss it more while she's in the castle. Angela can't believe everything she hears. Princess Garnet and the Duke apologize for their misunderstandings, and then the princess offers him to warm up inside her room since he's all wet, which he declines. When he's about to leave, she calls him back and tells him that she's the one who wrote the document and thinks the general has picked it up and is making things complicated. If they succeed in decoding it, it will be a problem for her, as it's her fanfic. She shares that she read the famous novel about him and wrote it in code. While walking, Angela bumps into the Duke, panics at seeing him all wet, and suggests he goes to his room to get changed. He tells her that there are a lot of knights around his room, so it's not best to go there. Instead, he wants to warm up in her room, which she agrees to. Now that they are in Angela's room, the Duke orders her to sit beside him for warmth, which she gladly accepts. Sir, I think you need to cover up. The Duke then initiates and tells her that he actually remembers the time when he was still the crown prince and she was a slave. They met at a wisteria tree, REBORN's hidden spot where she tried to hide from slave traders. Since the day REBORN helped her, every time he visited the place, Angela was always there, waiting to play with him and his bird, Chiron. Maybe it's bothering him at first, but eventually they become close enough for him to tell her about his day. REBORN was in a bad mood one night, so he went to the spot and became irritated when he saw Angela there again. But when he saw her, she was sobbing and covered in bruises. She quickly tried to cover up what happened and brightly greeted him, but he couldn't help but cry. He then continues his story, saying that after the Empress got assassinated, he went to their spot and was about to ask her to come with him when he saw her run away. This surprises Angela and explains that she never knew he was the crown prince and only ran away afraid that he'd find out that she was a slave. This surprises Angela, and she explains that she never knew he was the crown prince and only ran away afraid that he'd find out she's a slave. It was all a misunderstanding that took them this long to reconcile. Angela cries and apologizes. She was about to confess that he's her first love, but ends up saying he is the first person she stand. Angela can't stop sobbing since she's convinced the Duke has forgotten about her. And to comfort her, the Duke says he already knew her the first time he saw her in the carriage and considers her his first fan. What's with all these confessions? When she awakens, the Duke has already left, but Princess Hoya greets her and tells her to go with her. When the two reach somewhere high, the princess orders her to join her in drinking and mentions she knows she's eavesdropping on her conversation with the general earlier, adding that she could have killed her that time. Angela quickly apologizes and explains that it was not her intention to do so. As the city unfolds before them, the princess starts to happily tell Angela about her time spent at the palace with REBORN and Frederick, which sounds really sad to Angela. She then grabs Angela's hair, promising her safety, but raises her sword as she warns her to never tell anyone of the conversation she overheard. She tells her to keep writing her novel, but she'll be monitoring her closely from now on. And the night ends with them both not talking about the princess's plan with the general. The Duke assigned Mano to watch over Angela in the palace. As they are talking, Bourbon sneakily attacks Mano and dares him to spar, to which all the knights cheer. For those who are unaware, Bourbon is actually a girl. The crown prince, who is also curious how skilled Mano is, orders them to have a spar. As the two knights fight, Angela thinks that they are trying to kill each other and blames herself for putting Mano in that situation. The crown prince notices how focused she is and touches her chin, making her look at him while she innocently whispers that others might misunderstand and they should be careful, to which he agrees. As the knights are watching, they mention Bourbon, who almost became the Duke's guard when he was the crown prince, but he picked Mano instead, and add that the strongest swordsman in the Empire is the Duke, not Sir Chancellor, making Angela proud to hear those comments. Bourbon thinks so much about the prince that she does not notice Mano's attack, and the fight becomes so intense that Angela worries for Mano. Bourbon almost lost the fight, but she used her spare sword to fight back, causing Mano to lose. She wins, but feels humiliated while all the knights cheer for her. Angela attempts to console Mano by praising both of them loudly, causing the audience to applaud both of the knights. The prince smiles and is glad that she enjoyed the event. They are about to leave the training grounds when they see the town bustling for the festival, and the prince smiles as he recalls going to a festival with his siblings when he was younger, when suddenly, a horse loses control and charges towards the prince. No one dares touch him for fear of getting into trouble, but Angela takes the risk and leaps to save him from the mad horse. Still in panic, she checks on him as she reaches out her hand to him. He blushingly smiles and invites her to the festival. He quickly pulls her hand and they run, leaving the shocked knights behind. Mano suggests to Bourbon that they should silently follow them so that they will not cause a scene. As they are walking, Angela worries about his safety while the prince is enjoying it. He tells her that she can protect him like she did earlier. Although it's a festival, some people still recognize the crown prince. So along the way, she buys a mask for them to blend in. Meanwhile, Mano and Bourbon have already knocked out 2 men on the way. After a while, the crown prince decides to return, and so Angela gives him cotton candy. He then holds her hands and shares that since his siblings left the palace, he has lost the desire to go out with anyone. He asks her not to leave him like his siblings, but she is distracted by something. The crown prince notices that she's not paying attention to him, so he decides to go back to the palace. After he leaves, she feels guilty for not being attentive to him, but it's been bothering her since earlier. She overhears people discussing the prince in rows 2. She wonders who wrote the fake book and decides to look for the culprit, then finds out that the fake sequel speaks against the prince. Suddenly, somebody grabs her from the crowd. It's the Duke to the rescue. She suddenly hugs him, feeling comforted knowing he is there for her. And when the Duke reaches to hug her back, she abruptly comes to her senses and tells him that they have an urgent issue to discuss. He informs her that he is in the vicinity when he finds out about the novel. He worries about the new novel that is circulating the Empire. The author makes it a complete mess for their family. She asks him worriedly if he thinks she wrote it, but is relieved when the Duke tells her that he knows she'll not write anything to defame him. She also tells him that she was shocked, but seeing him has helped her calm down. Looking at the cotton candy, he remembers Frederick and asks her why they are always together lately and warns her it would be dangerous for her to get comfortable with him since he's the crown prince. Suddenly, Blen, with hands tied, falls down in front of them together with Manhwa. Angela and Blen talk about catching the fake author, and Blen tells them that he knows a place that handles secret dealings in the city center. Then the Duke orders Manhwa to take care of the novels that have spread around the town, and let his sister know it is fake. The Duke thinks that Blen might have some knowledge about the fake novel, so he lets him lead the way, adding that only Angela is allowed to write about him, and he is determined to catch the culprits. Back at the palace, the general discusses with the crown prince the new novel that is circulating the town, which amuses the crown prince since the rumors have barely spread. But the general already knows about it. The general informs the crown prince to dispose of the author so that when the rumors spread, no one will dare write about the imperial family again. And the crown prince says with resolve that he too doesn't need an author by his side. What could that mean? Blen leads Angela and the Duke to the underground district to find the fake author at the auction house. But the two end up sneaking in through the window since they can't give their names at the entrance. Angela laughs when the items that are getting auctioned are his merch. She now feels relieved knowing that he still has a lot of fans despite the new rumors. It looks like a lot of people are still believing in him, but she got hurt when they overheard the people talking badly about the author. When the Duke tries to call her, she cuts him off and jokingly tells him to call her Scholar for now. But our Duke here has something different in mind and calls her by her name. She can't stop blushing and starts to get shy, trying to look away. But the Duke grabs her hand and asks her to call him by his name as well. Oh! She then tries but is too shy to say it aloud. She then informs him that all she has now is from him, except for his worn-out loafers, and so asks the Duke to wait until she can say his name confidently. Or if it is an order, then she would, but the Duke agrees to wait. After a while, the item being auctioned is now the fake sequel of her book, and they didn't even notice Blen is gone. So the two of them work together and find the author when suddenly, someone in disguise signals outside and bandits come rushing. The masked man grabs the fake author somewhere. They plan to follow him, but the bandits get in the way. The Duke asks Angela if she has ever ridden a horse, and she confirms, mentioning that it was with the crown prince. While Angela tries to find their way out, she tells him she'll protect him like how she protected the crown prince before. But the Duke approaches her and asks what else she did with the crown prince. He lifts her demands. She does it with him too. She can't believe what she's heard and thinks that the Duke wants a fan date, which confuses him. And while carrying her, they jump outside the window and land perfectly on a horse. The Duke smilingly wants to hear what she said earlier, and off they go to their fan date. Princess Hoya slips onto the crown prince's balcony as he prepares to change. While his sister blatantly trespasses, he invites her to speak with him in private. She tries to read Frederick to see if he's involved with the new novel spreading, but she knows she can't pry too much since it's still unclear whether he knows they have the real author. She then inquires about his thoughts on her and REBORN's return to the castle. He takes a seat and begins to vent about how everything was stolen from him, his mother, them, his siblings, and then he was left alone. He tells her she should have come earlier. She admits that they may be late, thanking him for his response, and leaves. I feel bad for him. Meanwhile, Angela and the Duke track down the man who kidnapped the fake author. They see that the masked man is making a deal with the people in black, which Angela recognizes. They are the Imperial Knights whom she has given advice in the castle. Now the Duke is trying to figure out who sent them. It can either be the General or Frederick. He never let go of Angela's hand as she's trying to come up with a solution without killing, telling him that they should turn the fake author over to the Knights and they should be arrested. The Duke then spots someone sneaking up on Angela. He blocks the attack, holding his wrist while questioning who their leader is. The Duke fights the man with one hand in an effort to shield Angela, but the man cuts the Duke's leg with a hidden blade in his shoe when one knight notices them attacking them with arrows and hits the attacker while Angela and the Duke fall into the tunnel, allowing the attacker to escape. Angela tries to calm the Duke, thanking him for protecting her. When the knights try to approach them, she reveals herself and they recognize her. The Duke is surprised at how the knights lower their guard around her when normally they never hesitate to kill anyone suspicious. But then the knights start to question her company, so he quickly wears his mask, holds Angela by her neck, and instructs her to tell them he's a rogue bandit. He tries to comfort her, trying to make her understand that he can't reveal his identity, while she instructs him to make sure not to catch a cold, and then he leaves riding the horse. The knights safely assisted her out of the tunnel. While the knights are talking to her, she is thinking about the Duke, how he hurt his leg, how he needs to hide his identity, and so on. The knights then show her the captured fake author, and to her surprise, it's the merchant again. Thinking of how he stole the story and the money he must have saved, Angela beats him up. Meanwhile, the attacker was unaware that the Duke had caught up to him. The Duke throws him a dagger, revealing his face. The General's hand, Thoroid. Looking at how mad the Duke is, this is not going to be pleasant. Things are getting serious. Will the Espelindo's comeback to the palace ever happen? The General's attacks are getting out of hand. The Duke and Thoroid throw themselves into a battle at once, a vicious exchange of blades that proves both swordsmen are equally skilled. All the while, REBORN is channeling his rage into every blow. He has a lot to be angry about: the injustice of his reputation, the constant threat on both his and Hoya's lives, and most recently, how Angela has had to sacrifice her safety to keep his identity a secret. All that rage must be worth something, because soon the Duke has the General's right-hand man on the ground. Without any hesitation, he raises his blade to Thoroid's neck. He's about to deliver a final blow when he hears Angela screech from over the castle wall. This girl has saved so many lives from butting in at critical moments, and she probably doesn't even know it. Instead of killing Thoroid, REBORN places his sword before him, spelling out a very clear warning. If this guy causes any more trouble, next time it'll be his neck. Meanwhile, Hoya has been at the side of the Lord Chancellor, making political alliances with clergymen who are very grateful for the aid of the Espelindo family. The Crown Prince is also gathered, just in time for a very battered and bruised Sir Thoroid to appear, begging the Chancellor for forgiveness. Well, that gives the game away a bit, doesn't it? I guess now we know who gave him the order to attack Angela. Right behind him is REBORN, sat atop his horse with a stormy expression. As the others are watching, he unsheaths his sword. The Lord Chancellor does the same, clearly hoping for an opportunity to ruin the Duke's reputation further. The archers who stand beside the Crown Prince are about to fire, but Frederick stops them. The air is full of tension. Everyone's weapons are drawn, but no one quite knows what's going on. Including me. I mean, anyone else a little confused as to why he decided to make this standoff so public? The Duke points to Sir Thoroid, with whom he left a letter. It's essentially a caution to the General for ignoring his warning. For once again putting his life in danger, REBORN took one of Thoroid's hands, even though he said it should have been his life. Damn, that's metal as heck! He even thanks the General for the opportunity to re-establish his position, and says that if this happens again, he won't bother with words. To make it an even stronger statement, the back of the letter contains a paparazzi sketch of Thoroid raising a blade to Angela, shocking the surrounding knights. Well, I think that's about as clear as a message can get. After all the commotion, Angela is safely back in her room, recovering from the bandit attack. Mono looks just as exhausted and even has to guard her room now in case of a follow-up. But above all, she's worried about the Duke, since when she last saw him, he was injured. Almost as though she summoned him, Angela hears a tapping outside and almost knocks the Duke and Blen off the windowsill. Seeing that he's still soaking wet, she invites him inside to warm up and wraps the wound on his ankle. Ever the gentleman, REBORN catches her off guard by proposing they finish the fan date from earlier. Delighted, Angela hops over to the window to join him, telling Blen to be a good boy and stay put. Like something from a Spider-Man comic, the Duke wraps his arm around her and tells his scholar to hold on tight. Something tells me these kids are going to be out until the sun is up. Meanwhile, Frederick is getting a vicious talking to from the general. And by talking to, I mean he's beating him up. He's even reached for a dagger behind the prince. For a second, it looks like he might have used it on him, but instead he throws it at Bourbon, who has appeared at the door. It misses him by literally centimeters, and even though he was trying to protect the prince, Frederick tells Bourbon to get out. Wow, that's kind of dark. I know he's not the best guy in the world, but I hope the crown prince is going to be okay. No one deserves to be hurt and humiliated like that. After finishing her fan date and renewing her determination as an author, Angela has been writing so fast that Mono hasn't even had time to review her work. The two are chatting genially when they come across the Imperial Knights from yesterday. Having heard the news about Thyroid, they seem incredibly worried for her. Rumors are already flying left and right about another attack, but Angela isn't worried. How could she be when she's got Duke REBORN on her side? She wants more than anything to be close to him, the way they were last night. But this isn't the Duke's mansion, and they both have a job to do. Before anyone can spot the sparks flying between them, Mono separates the lovebirds and sends Angela off to the exhausted scholars who are still working on the Vestia document. After a long shift in the library, Angela takes a break outside, unaware that Princess Garnet is watching from the shadows. As usual, by the way. Seriously, why is this woman so sneaky? She spots Angela reading the fake second volume and decides that's suspicious enough to jump out and cause a scene. There's a brief misunderstanding where Angela thinks the Crown Princess is another murderer and nearly caves her head in, but somehow they manage to smooth it over. Mainly because the two girls can bond over the bits of the second book that they disagree with, of which there are a lot, like a lot. They haven't really had a chance to talk before, and the conversation flows pretty naturally. Princess Garnet assumes it's because the scholar is from her own country, Vestia. But honestly, it's mostly because Angela is trying really hard not to say something suspicious. Literally seconds after the Crown Princess and the scholar part ways, Angela runs into the Crown Prince and once again whacks him on the head. Angela, babe, seriously, you have to stop hitting the most powerful people in the Empire. Someday it's gonna come back to bite you. But the Crown Prince doesn't mind. Actually, he's glad for the chance to tease her and suggests they run away again like they did before the festival. Quick to keep things PG in front of all the Imperial Knights, Angela turns the conversation toward the document of Vestia, mentioning that she may have a lead. Frederick doesn't seem to be listening. Honestly, he's kind of just zoning out while gazing into her eyes. Angela seems concerned, and clearly has no idea how attached he's becoming. But she has reason to be worried when she spots the tears brimming in his eyes. As if escaping his cold exterior, a single tear travels down his cheek. Frederick is quick to wipe it away, as Bourbon steps between them, ordering Angela and the knights behind them to look away. Oh, that's so sad! The poor guy has nowhere to turn. Even when he's crying, everyone is ordered to keep their distance and pretend they didn't see it. What a lonely life Frederick must live. After taking a moment to control himself, the Crown Prince looks back at Angela, who is doing a not-so-subtle job at trying not to cry herself. The sight seems to cheer him up, and he reassures Bourbon that all is well. Even though he's offered a rest, Frederick refuses, deciding they should head to his next appointment right away. He wishes the scholar good luck with her work, totally oblivious to the fact that the Duke has been listening to the whole scene at the bottom of the stairs. Clearly, someone is still a little jealous about how much the Crown Prince gets to see her. A few days pass, and Angela continues her work attempting to decode the document. She hasn't seen Prince Frederick since their emotional run-in, but for some reason, she can't get him off her mind. Well, I guess suddenly breaking down in the middle of the day does leave an impression. While wrapped up in her worries about the prince, she spots the Duke asleep in the corner, and immediately begins to fangirl over how sweet he looks. That's our Angela, all right. She never misses a chance to act like a total creep. She wakes him up by absent-mindedly playing with his hair, which gives her such a shock that she nearly smacks him over the head with a book. At this point, that's basically her way of saying hello. In all the commotions, she somehow ends up on Rayburn's lap, because, of course she does. Angela starts squirming out of awkward humiliation, but the Duke grabs her waist and fixes her there. Oh my god! Did anyone else just get butterflies? She goes bright red and scrambles off, moving to the window to compose herself. The Duke suddenly asks her why she's been spending so much time with the Crown Prince. Nice one, Rayburn. Real subtle. Angela just explains that he asked her to take a walk sometime, but neither of them seem particularly satisfied with her answer. While the kids are busy beating around the bush, Mono comes to meet Hoya in her office and spots a covered map with battlements and marked targets. He's been suspicious of her for some time now and even mentions aloud that she's been meeting with the General Chancellor a lot. Hoya just brushes it off and says it's important to keep important people close, which is technically true. Still doesn't explain all the majorly sus stuff she's been saying, or that insane plan she made with the General to kill her brother and take his place. Is it just me, or has anyone else not gotten over that? Soon after, the document of Vestia is finally decoded. The Empire's fears are being realized. Despite a close political relationship, it seems like Vestia has been in contact with the Empire's wartime enemy, the country of Talon. Angela is shocked to hear that it was so suddenly decoded, because the scholars didn't seem to be getting anywhere. This news also casts the princess in a very bad light. It looks like she may even be sent here on purpose to get close to the Crown Prince. It's all pretty suspicious, and after a quick glance at the guilty-looking scholars, Angela decides more investigation is needed. Suddenly, remembering that she saw some similar Vestian documents at the General's house, she runs out into the courtyard to ask him herself. Now, I don't know much about Imperial politics, but challenging the General Chancellor seems like the fastest way to an early grave, if you ask me. She's just trying to think up the least offensive way to ask when the Duke appears at her side, subtly signaling not to push it. So instead, Angela asks the General for permission to continue studying the documents, under the excuse that she wants more practice in case she's called upon in future. The General gives her a firm no and walks off to their meeting. The Duke must join them too, but before he goes, he tells his scholar to return to his mansion. After all, her job here is done. Her life in the castle has finally come to a close. While she begins to pack, the High and Mighty are having a meeting to decide their next steps. First comes an expedition to certify the authenticity of the documents, although I'm not sure what good that will do since it seems pretty clear that they were forged. One way or another, this is a serious matter. So serious, in fact, that the Emperor himself is returning to the palace to discuss it. The Crown Prince himself also wants in, which puts pressure on all the other nobles to join. Rayburn has a lot of reservations. For one thing, it will be at least a month to get to Vestia and back, which is a lot of time to leave Angela without his protection. But he doesn't have much choice. It would look like he was taking a stand against the crown if he didn't go, so in the end, he submits. He orders Mono to stay, partly to look after Angela, but also to keep an eye on Hoya. Even if his knight doesn't admit what he heard, Rayburn knows well enough that his sister is acting slippery. Mono isn't happy about leaving his Duke, but he can't disobey a direct order. At his master's request, he shows the Duke into the room Angela is sleeping in, since she hasn't moved back into the mansion just yet. Rayburn dismisses his knight and heads over to the bed, taking off his jacket and seeming more exhausted than usual. He watches Angela sleep because, well, I guess she did it to him, so it's only fair if he does it back. But I can't be the only one who thinks both these kids are a little creepy. Thinking of how boldly she walked up to the General Chancellor that day, the Duke starts playing with her hair, softly waking her up. He tells Angela not to put herself in danger, including with her writing. Since she's basically been hired to write propaganda fanfic, she will always be in a degree of danger. But it seems the Duke is starting to care more about his author than her work. Still half asleep, she throws the blanket over him and just goes back to sleep. Rayburn thinks he's been all slick, but Angela knows the expedition is coming up. So on the morning of their departure, she dresses up in disguise as a manic fan and heads down to see them off. She also uses her time to spread flyers in the pockets of the audience, announcing the publication of a sequel to the Prince's series coming soon. Some of the audience members think it's just another fake, but others are excited. And when the man himself appears, they are quick to show their support, throwing merch at the Espelindo Knights and screaming at Rayburn. As his horse is passing through, he catches sight of Angela in the crowd. She doesn't see him at first until a strong wind blows off her hood and he takes off his fancy helmet. And then, just for a moment, they catch sight of each other. For once, he gives her a small smile, knowing this might be the last time he sees her for months. As they're saying their silent goodbyes, Hoya is up to her usual tricks. This time, she has used the escaped Sir Thoroid to capture Princess Garnet, offering her a chance to work with the famous author. Uh-oh, this doesn't sound good. What is she up to now? Almost 3 weeks after the Duke's departure, an army of miserable fans have left dolls and merch at the front gate. Lizzie is very excited to take on the duty of consoling the fans, and also tells Angela about the sequel release date, encouraging her to sneak out early to get a copy. I wonder how she'd react if she knew the author herself was standing right in front of her. But all this tension and excitement around the new release date can only be good news for Angela. Of course, it also brings back all those feelings of longing, worrying after her prince and his difficult life on the road. Missing the Duke, she goes to visit the office where they first spoke, and finds Mono playing chess. They chat amicably about how quiet life has been without the Duke, although he can tell that she's nervous about the publication of the sequel. To try and cheer her up, he suggests they take a walk around the town, and even offers to lend her some money so that she can go shopping. But before they can head off, the head maid bustles in with all this fan mail for the Duke, and one letter in particular catches Mono's eye. It looks like Princess Hoya has summoned them to the Imperial Castle, though for what, they can't quite tell. We jump across to the princess herself to find her wandering the throne room. She's just looking up at the throne itself when who walks in all of a sudden? None other than His Majesty the Emperor. I guess those rumors about his return were true after all. The energy between them is a little awkward. Hoya isn't used to her father acting so familiar, and it's super weird for him to be back in the capital for good. No sooner has he arrived than the throne room is flicked by tens of nobles eager to kiss his boots. While Hoya makes her quiet exit, Mono, Angela, and the excitable maids have come into town for an expedition of their own. It takes literally minutes for Angela to walk off on her own and get lost, but she doesn't mind a bit of alone time. Soon, she stumbles upon a pair of kids getting in trouble for some doodles of the royal family. The officials get all up and aggressive when Angela's fanfic tumbles out of his bag. They kick up a real fuss about the book and how no one should be supporting the Duke now that the Emperor has returned. After a comment about the quality of the writing, Angela can't help but speak up. Just as she's shouting out, she's grabbed by a mysterious figure in robes who pulls her away. The officials ask if she had anything to say, and thankfully, she denies it. The officials seem to want to make an example of her, but the glowing amber eyes of the person beside her make them think twice. Wait, is that who I think it is? The stranger walks her toward a carriage, revealing themselves to be the Princess Hoya. Uh-oh, where's Mono when you need him? Angela is now scared, and with good reason. She tries to make casual conversation in the carriage, but the atmosphere is tense to say the least. Hoya explains to the author that the expedition is very likely to enter into conflict while they're away. Although Angela was hoping for the best, it seems the Empire really is on the verge of war after all. All of these changes put Hoya in a precarious position, so who knows what kind of plan she'll devise next. Angela is just starting to worry that she may have run out of usefulness when Mono and the rescue party arrive. They're all full of bravado until they realize it's Princess Hoya they're attacking, and suddenly they back off. It turns out the princess has taken them to a little villa on the cliffside. It's a place belonging to the Espalindo family, so the maids, Angela, and Mono can stay there for a few days, since there's a lot going on in the city at the moment. But it provides ample opportunities for Angela to doubt the princess, constantly wondering if at any moment she might be cornered and disposed of, down one of those very rocky precipices. But so far so good. Kind of. Hoya even lets her write a little message on the end of her letter to REBORN, which will be sent via Raven to the expedition party. Little does she know that Thoroid is watching on from just around the corner with a dagger in hand. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't think of one good reason why someone would be eavesdropping with a weapon unsheathed. It looks like things are about to get dicey for Angela again. Literally. Thoroid is approaching slowly while the oblivious Angela is coming up with the name for the Raven. There's an incredibly tense moment when Hoya watches him, glancing between her assassin and the author as precious seconds tick on. And then, at the last moment, she covers Angela's eyes and pulls her away with the excuse of eating the cookies she mentioned earlier. I wonder what made her change her mind. With Thoroid retreating back into the shadows, Angela releases the Raven, none the wiser about the death that was awaiting her just around the corner. Only a few seconds later, Mono has discovered the waiting assassin and slipped his sword through the walls in an attempt to catch him. Nice try, Mono. You were so nearly on time. But the good news is, he saw and heard the whole thing go down. He doesn't know it's Thoroid or why she called off the assassination, but he knows to be wary. I mean, honestly, when do these people not have to be wary? There's a sword flying their way every 5 minutes these days. After that tense moment, Hoya, Mono, and Angela gather for some silly-looking cookies in the parlor. To both their surprise, Hoya seems more interested in the document from Vestia than hearing about the book. Luckily, Angela still has her copy of the original code and hands it over to the princess. Apparently, she has an absolutely insane memory and can pick out a few of the characters featured on the documents in the General Chancellor's home. The moment she's jotted down the characters, Hoya burns the page. Now, the two of them are the only ones who know what was on that document. She tasks Mono and Angela with the job of accompanying a supply wagon to her ship to be sent to the traveling expedition. She admits openly that the smartest move now would be to kill Angela, but says she sees more use in her instead. I don't know that I totally believe that, but if there's one thing you can trust Hoya to be, it's calculated. If this works in her favor, then maybe Angela will truly be safe. For now. After they have accomplished their mission, she suggests Angela retire in a territory up north in the countryside. There, she can live in luxury for the rest of her life, so long as she swears to never mention her connection to House Espalindo. Well, that's a heck of a lot to consider. If she doesn't take the territory up north, she could join the expedition. Plus, one of Hoya's conditions was that she stop writing. That would mean the book would never get published, even though she's already gone through all that hard work. But then again, publishing a book now that the Emperor is back would mean anyone caught reading it would be accused of treason. Ugh, it's all so complicated. I can't keep up. Of course, Angela doesn't have a lot of options, and could still very much be killed at any moment. So she agrees to board the supply wagon, leaves Lizzie in charge of the Manic fans at the gates, and hands over her finished manuscript to Hoya. She's been told to go through the underground village to meet the wagon, so she and Mono make their way through the slums towards their objective. For once, Mono has decided to take a stand. He is determined not to let Angela join the expedition, so as soon as they board the wagon, he intends to knock her unconscious and send her up north, while he himself joins the war party. It sounds cruel, but actually he just wants to protect her from the horrors of conflict. Who knows if she would ever see REBORN in the same light if she knew what he was like on the battlefield? On his way to the wagon, Mono stumbles upon a secret meeting between the General Chancellor's men and the Emperor's men. As if that wasn't suspicious enough, they then start talking about their failed plan to remove Princess Hoya from the central territory of the Empire. Mono follows quietly behind as they hand over a portrait sketch of the suspected author of REBORN's novel. They're just mentioning the one-eyed knight who asks them to open up a smuggling route when Sir Thoroid appears, flying down from the rooftops to attack Mono. Oh no. Was this all one big setup to take out Mono and Angela? Has Princess Hoya finally run out of patience? Meanwhile, Angela is waiting at the underground village by the wagon when Mono comes tumbling through the ceiling. That's one way to make an entrance. After everything, it seems Thoroid wasn't there to assassinate him, but to show Mono the way. The two gather by the wagon after hearing a commotion inside and open it up to reveal Princess Garnet? It turns out Hoya captured the princess several days ago and was moving her secretly from location to location. With Thoroid keeping a close eye on her, she didn't have a chance to escape until that very morning. She made a break for it and found a wagon full of white birds waiting outside. After hearing the guards mention that it was bound for Vestia, she boarded and must have fell asleep after being drugged with sleeping potion in her morning tea. Now that she's in the carriage and very visibly crying, Mono and Angela have an important decision to make. If this mission involves secretly transporting a potential enemy of the state, then it just got a whole lot more dangerous. Not to mention the fact that they're literally being attacked by Imperial soldiers right this second as well. Of course, they think this was all part of Hoya's plan. Add to that Angela's personal history with helpless kids in carriages, there's no way she can refuse. Angela tells Mono that they should take the princess and the carriage and head to the ship together. But he still wants her to head north and have a chance at a peaceful life. After a little bit of persuading and a lot of using her trademark shiny eyes, Mono gives in. I mean, he didn't really have a choice, did he? If there's one thing we know about Angela, it's that she will not be moved. But they really need to get a move on. The Chancellor's men have spotted Princess Garnet in the carriage and are determined not to let them get away. Mono takes the lead, driving them as fast as he can to the docks, where the ship is ready and waiting for them. It looks like they're gonna make it, until one of the knights sneaks up from behind and grabs Angela, pulling her onto his horse. Oh dear, he has no idea who he's messing with. Angela bashes him off the horse with her trademark move and rides the horse ahead towards the gates. The knights have been ordered to close the doors, but a pair of familiar faces look conflicted as they spot their favorite scholar charging toward them. Did she make it? Or did the ship leave without them? While us poor readers are on the edge of our seats with tension, we get a glimpse at what life has been like on the road for the expedition. The Crown Prince and Duke are on a hunt, giving them an equal chance to show off their skills, though in the end, REBORN comes out on top. They're currently traveling through the southern territory between the Rudix Empire and Vestia, and have stopped to take advantage of the hospitality of a few southern lords there. One lord plucks up the courage to ask if the rumors of war are true, and is rudely cut off by the General Chancellor, who basically tells him it's none of his business, which, is true, but he doesn't have to be such a douche about it. While the Prince and Chancellor are treated to the finest dinner the land has to offer, Duke REBORN refuses to eat, even when his own men bring a portion straight to him. Everyone can tell that he's on edge. There are probably a lot of reasons, but the biggest is that this is the first expedition he's done without Mono. Missing his usual partner in crime, he seems more solitary and doesn't make as much of an effort to hang out with the other nobles or soldiers. But really, what else is new? While taking a break by the river, the Duke is visited by the Crown Prince, acting unusually friendly. He seems a little concerned and tries to encourage REBORN to come and join them for a meal, since the boar they hunted earlier is being prepared. But as usual, his brother is cold and tells him to worry about himself instead of others. Oh, come on, REBORN. Would it kill you to just be nice for once? Apparently, it would, since the next moment he lashes out and grabs Frederick by the collar, blaming him for the slow progress the expedition has been making. And he isn't wrong about that. But then he starts talking about how he should have just trusted Princess Garnet, and then they could have avoided this whole mess in the first place. The Duke cuts himself off halfway, but his meaning is obvious. The Crown Prince withdraws suddenly, sick of people telling him how to live his life. Who to marry, how best to use his throne. Without another word, REBORN stabs a sword in the tree that Bourbon is hiding behind and storms off to talk to his own men. Gosh, for a grown man, he really does act like a baby sometimes. While out riding alone, REBORN receives the note sent by Hoya and Angela via Raven. He recognizes the bird immediately and holds his arm out for it to land on, also catching sight of one of Angela's trademark leaves that she never runs out of. Just seeing it makes the Duke smile, a sight so rare that Blen immediately gets his sketch pad out to capture it. After all, portraits of Duke Espalindo smiling are worth 4 times the price. The Crown Prince is also watching from above, and after seeing his expression soften, he knows immediately that he must have received word from Angela. I wonder if he's jealous, or just happy to see his older brother loosen up a little? While he's watching on the wall, Frederick is approached by a group of soldiers asking to host a meeting with the general after sunset. Only he's not listening. He just watched the Duke go all cold again after reading the contents of his sister's letter, after which he suddenly rode off into the woods. As you might expect, that letter contained a warning for REBORN. It explained how the Emperor had returned and how rumors of succession have already begun to circulate again. He also gets word of the supply ship coming their way, and rides straight back to camp, intent on seeing the general. When a knight steps into his path to try and offer him some dinner, REBORN punches him in the throat? What the heck, dude? I guess maybe he's suspicious because it's the general who keeps sending him food, but that's no need to shoot the messenger. After literally assaulting an innocent, the Duke storms into the general's office to announce that the Emperor is sending a supply ship to Vestia. But the general doesn't bother to hold a conversation and basically tells him to do whatever he wants. As soon as REBORN opens the door, he walks right into Frederick, barging past the others in his usual teenage tantrum. When he gets back to camp, however, he discovers 2 interesting things. 1. A new member of his knights is clearly a Stan, since he has a piece of the Duke's merch. And 2. The mice that ate the food from his dinner have died. It doesn't take a genius to connect the dots. So that's why the general has been taking such an interest in his dinners. REBORN has just about reached his limit now. On a sudden decision, he orders his troops to prepare to move out. Instead of moving at the snail's pace of the general and the Crown Prince, they're going to march ahead separately to greet the supply ship coming in at Vestia. The same ship that hopefully Mono and Angela managed to sneak onto. They were initially going to leave at dawn, but the Duke changed his mind after seeing the supply list, which includes Sir Mono, a carriage full of birds, and Angela. After that, he ordered them to get moving that same night. Aw, that's so cute! He wants to get there as fast as possible to see his little scholar again. After the meeting with the general, the Crown Prince stays behind to discuss further political matters. The general seems to have no interest in actually verifying the document from Vestia. He is more interested in using Frederick as a tool to control the southern territories and their nobles. Angered and feeling just as trapped as he did at the castle, the Crown Prince orders the general to leave, and when Bourbon appears outside offering him an escape, he takes it. I guess the prince's right hand decided the danger was too great with the general around, and wanted to follow the Duke's lead and reach their destination as fast as possible. So now everyone is riding at full speed toward Vestia to meet Angela. Seems like a good time to check in on the author herself, who did in fact get on the ship and has just now arrived in Vestia. Unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and roses. The Vestian forces won't let them disembark, since they're suspicious that this is some kind of ambush. I guess given the current political situation, it's only fair. They say they won't allow anyone to get off the ship until they can prove they mean no harm. Luckily, Princess Garnet steps out just at the right time, distracting the soldiers who send for their king immediately. They ask her to shout a code word if this is a trap from the Rudex Empire, and for a minute, it looks like she might. After all, she has more reason than anyone to want revenge on the monarchy. After waiting 8 years for a marriage that never took place and then being ousted as a traitor, could you blame her? The only reason she has to be conflicted is Angela, who always helped and listened to her. She is just about to give the soldiers her answer when suddenly a ship comes out of nowhere and fires at them. Wait, what the heck is going on? It couldn't be from Vestia. They would never fire at their own princess. The Duke's own men are just reaching the walls of the port when they hear a giant booming sound and see fire in the distance. Yeah, no, it's not looking good for the ragtag carriage crew. Frederick and Bourbon aren't far behind them and also speed up once they hear the commotion. Luckily, no one on board the ship was badly injured. Mono, Angela, and Garnet are also unharmed. The ship that fired was supposed to be empty, but now suspicion is rife between Rudex and Vestian forces. Everyone is pointing fingers, and Princess Garnet in particular seems majorly stressed out. Whoever attacked a supply ship sent from His Majesty the Emperor clearly wanted to stir up trouble between the two nations, and potentially harm her. This really isn't the welcome party she was hoping for. And to make matters even worse, Duke Rayburn is charging through the underpass toward the harbor with all of his knights. All he knows is that an Imperial ship has been hit, and the first thing he intends to do the second the gates are open is kill the highest-ranking man he can find. If the ship incident wasn't enough to start a war, that definitely will be. Meanwhile, Angela has dug up her old scholar's robe to help her blend in with the Vestians. After all, she is supposed to be from this place. It's time to make use of her fake identity and try to calm things down at the harbor. But before she can approach anyone, she hears a group of Vestians boasting about all the goods they can take from the supply ship. They discover a cache of the Duke's merch, but unlike the rabid fans in the Empire, they seem disgusted. Looks like Rayburn's image still needs a lot of polishing on this side of the border. They try to burn the wagon, so Angela comes running over, accidentally exposing herself as one of the Duke's people. She tries to persuade them to put down their torches, but the people are too enraged. In the Rudex Empire, Rayburn is seen as cold and cruel, but an asset to the army. In Vestia, war and bloodshed follows him wherever he goes. Those very kids lost their parents because of his soldiers. Yikes. I bet they won't be happy to hear that he's riding another war party beneath the harbor at this very moment. Angela is still trying to put out the fires when the very ground opens up before them, revealing Prince Rayburn himself, charging towards her. He catches her just in time, saddling her atop his horse and also atop his lap. Well, that's a nice reunion. Angela is delighted to see him and even manages to get a hug in between her usual nervous rambling. Strangely, he doesn't head toward the harbor with all the smoke. Doesn't pull his sword out to kill the first guy he sees like he said he would. Instead, he grabs Angela around the waist to keep her steady and rides in totally the opposite direction. Despite everything, his worries for her safety, all those days they spent apart, the threat of war looming on the horizon, Rayburn tells her he's glad she made it. Angela is all cute and shy since they haven't seen each other in a while, though it might also have been something to do with the fact that he can't seem to keep his hands off her. Like, seriously, he even uses her lack of horse riding experience as an excuse to hold her very tight while they're riding. Come on, dude, just tell her you missed her. Suddenly, the lovebirds are interrupted by the sound of the Imperial horn, and it's not a moment too late. Mono is currently looking after Princess Garnet, who fainted after all the stress, and is now being accused of betraying the Rudex Empire by taking her side. Suddenly, Garnet is snatched out of his grasp by the princes of Vestia, Garnet's brothers. And boy, do they look mad. Just as things are heating up, the Duke himself arrives and immediately demands a report from Mono. Just before the cannon fired, he was able to spot a small group of people on the empty ship and saw a hawk beside them. They knew where the gunpowder was being stored on the Rudex ship and fired right at it. That's why the explosion was so big. Given the clues at hand, it seems like this may have been the work of the general. After all, who else would have known the contents of the ship and would have a motive to cause tension between the two nations? Regardless, right now the priority is Princess Garnet and convincing the princes of Vestia that they meant her no harm. Angela steps up to explain the situation, including the document they decoded. At first, they think she's just a beggar because of all the damage she sustained from the incident on the ship. But after Prince REBORN and the knights all vouch for her, she is given a chance to introduce herself. She explains that Garnet came with them to help clear up the misunderstanding and divulge the truth of the letter. When Princess Garnet wakes up, she's in a grand chamber in the palace of Vestia. Her mother is sat beside the bed, and the moment she opens her eyes, one of her brothers, Louis, comes running over. Everyone in their family has missed her dearly and is delighted to find that she hasn't sustained any real injuries from the ship incident. Duke REBORN has already begun negotiations about the document with her family, but the royals themselves seem more interested in Angela, especially Louis, who is convinced that she has a crush on him. Sure, buddy. Whatever helps you sleep at night. While the youngsters are catching up in Garnet's room, the eldest son and crown prince to the Vestian nation is sitting with his father, the king, trying to smooth over relations between the two countries after everything that happened at the port. The crown prince, whose name is Nox, seems very stubborn, especially in front of Duke REBORN. Oh dear, looks like we've got two big egos in the room. At least REBORN is being understanding for once. The king of Vestia intends to tackle the issue of the document at a public meeting, but since the crown prince hasn't yet arrived, there's not much they can do for now. Yeah, speaking of, where is Frederick? Wasn't he only a little ways behind the Duke? Anyway, they have bigger things to worry about right now. Vestia has been under pressure for some time to continue sending troops to their border with Talon, but they're running out of men. Realistically, they need the help of the Reduxians, but with tensions between the two running high, the king doesn't dare to ask for aid. Prince Nox, on the other hand, isn't afraid to speak his mind. He accuses the Duke and his people of mocking the Vestians and using this document as an excuse to threaten them. Why else would they send an expedition all the way out here? The tension in the room is high. The two princes are clearly at a political standoff, and the last thing either side wants to do is aggravate the other, which is why it's such a shock when Angela gets out of her seat to whack the crown prince in the head. Yes, you heard me. She literally just got up and smacked him right across the forehead. But instead of acting coy and apologetic the way she usually does, the fake scholar uses the opportunity to speak her mind. She seems frustrated that the prince has come here with so many preconceptions about what the Empire is expecting. He's acting just like the beggar she met on the street, unwilling to hear anything except his own prejudices. She points out that none of them would have made the long journey to come to Vestia if they didn't intend on negotiating in the first place, which is true. Well, it's true for her and the Duke, at least. I can't speak for the general and all his cronies. Nox doesn't take all of that particularly well, and when REBORN stands up for Angela, he only gets more irritated. It's a good thing they're interrupted by the arrival of the Crown Prince Frederick, otherwise it might have come to blows. As soon as he arrives, Princess Garnet rushes to meet him. The crowd watch their interaction carefully. Everyone is very suspicious about their prolonged engagement and the relations between their countries. She launches into an unexpected kiss, putting the crowd at ease immediately. But is it for real or just for show? Poor Garnet probably wants it to be a grand reunion, but as usual, the Crown Prince only has eyes for Angela. Oh, I feel so bad for that girl. She's always being used. After their very public display of affection, Angela is formally introduced to the Vestian aristocracy as the princess's scholar friend. The king seems to be putting a lot of pressure on her to solve this misunderstanding, which is kind of intense. The atmosphere at the meeting is joyful, but it's clear that the king is taking every chance to emphasize the bond between Vestia and Rudext. The crowd even start calling for Garnet and Frederick to tell the story of how they fell in love. Oof. I don't know if you want the details to that one, guys. That is one rocky road. The Duke is notably absent at the meeting due to an incident that kicked off just before they began. The general and the rest of the expedition arrived soon after Frederick, blowing a hole in the city walls and storming in like a war party. They were probably expecting to find the city already in ruins, but instead they walked right in on the crown prince and princess kissing. A slightly panicked Frederick immediately apologized for the unwarranted attack of his knights, which made the general absolutely furious. Well, good. It's about time that guy got shown up for once. Since the Empire's ship was attacked earlier, it was kind of easy to sweep the whole affair under the rug. By that point, both nations had made grave mistakes and accidentally attacked one another. So Frederick was quick to call it fair and square and pretend it never happened. Maybe because of his generosity, the Vestian king was humbled enough to ask for help with the Talon border skirmishes, the first time they had ever reached out for aid. So the expedition party, who had literally just arrived and trashed the ramparts, were immediately turned around to head to the Talon border to deal with the beast subjugation issue. Strangely, the Duke also volunteered his knights to the cause and left at once beside the general. They only had a very brief reunion, and now Mono and Angela are back on their lonesome again. Mono can tell that she's feeling down, so he offers her a cookie and tells her to cheer up. It's kind of sweet, although literally the second that the king sees that she's calmed down, he puts her to work, asking her to write down the documents she memorized from the Empire. Before she can start, Garnet suddenly interrupts, looking guilty as all heck and very stressed out. Her father brushes her worries aside and hands Angela a piece of paper. Knox stands at her side, reading aloud what she writes. All the while, poor Garnet is cowering in the corner covering her ears, waiting for the moment that they all realize it's just fan fiction. But when she looks up and sees her brother wielding a sword at Angela, she realizes that something must have gone wrong. Finally, the pieces are falling into place. It wasn't the original letter that she sent containing the fan fiction about REBORN, but a fabrication designed to make it look like Princess Garnet was attempting to contact Talon. Mono, taking up his usual role of knight in shining armor, is quick to knock the prince's sword from his hands, taking Angela into his embrace and shielding her from the guards. Okay, I know we love to talk about REBORN, but honestly, Mono deserves more credit. Suddenly, another hooded figure appears, pushing the guards back and demanding they lower their weapons. Who would have thought? It's Bourbon! Not usually one to come to Angela's aid, it seems he was more interested in defending the Crown Prince's honor than the author's. Garnet is still sat beside Frederick, imploring him to call off his knights and trying to convince him that the letter is a lie. All he can see is Angela, the way she's shaking in Mono's arms across the hall. Yeah, and if she looks that scared, why don't you do something about it? Damn, this prince drives me insane sometimes. Knox is stirring up the tension in the hall, telling his father to stop bowing to the Empire and punish those who brought this document over. For one thing, he points out that the handwriting is so bad there's no way it could have been written by a royal. Wait, does that mean it may be written by someone in the Empire? Someone who learned the Vestian language but hadn't practiced it much? Maybe I'm biased, but this is screaming the general to me. Does anyone else think so? Angela tries to calm Knox down and offers to write out the other document she memorized, the one shown to her by Princess Hoya. The king shuts up his furious son and beckons her forward, allowing her to start writing. This one is the fan fiction, or rather, it's what Princess Garnet expected her life to be like in the Empire, showing her affection for the Crown Prince. Knox is about to pop off again, but Garnet comes forward to admit that this is the truth, the real letter she wrote. After it's all been read aloud, the royals are humiliated, but at least they're no longer on the verge of war. And actually, some of the nobles really enjoyed the story. Who knows, maybe the Vestian Empire will start standing the Crown Prince instead? After the commotion, Angela is exhausted. To her surprise, Crown Prince Knox makes an effort to apologize for acting so hastily. As he should, really. I mean, he was acting so aggressive earlier. He even drew his sword against her. Angela is just grateful that they seem to have avoided war, at least for the time being. Garnet has also recovered from the humiliation of having her story read aloud, and is equally grateful for Angela's intrusion. In order to figure out who was hiding the real document, Knox wants to know where Angela found the real letter. And that puts her in a tricky position. The letter was at the general's house, and it's not like she's exactly on his side, but wouldn't it sort of be betraying her country to admit that information? At Knox's insistence, Angela admits it was in General Chancellor Schwandel's room, immediately making everyone uncomfortable. especially Frederick, who is only a few meters away. As we know, the general is practically the emperor's shadow, a trusted advisor and a man who is very popular with the noble families. If it turns out he was trying to sever the alliance between Vestia and Rudext, the empire would descend into chaos and confusion. It would also cast the entire Schwandel family in a dark light. Frederick seems to have this on his mind when he kneels before the king and queen of Vestia and begs them to overlook the general's involvement. At least for now. The royals are flustered to have the heir to an empire kneeling before him. They believe that he has peace in his heart, so they accept his proposal, despite feeling a little suspicious. While all this has been going on up in Vestia, the subjugation team has been fighting tooth and nail down in the desert. They're already exhausted and surrounded on all sides when suddenly, Talon's worm shows up, a great beast with literally hundreds of teeth. REBORN is the one to slay it, and once it's dead, they find hundreds of his merch dolls in the belly of the beast. Has his fandom made it all the way down south? This whole stan culture thing is seriously getting out of hand. I guess the knights must be pretty good at their job because the subjugation team are soon returning to the kingdom. Literally took less than half a day, but that's Duke REBORN for you. Of course, while some will be happy with their return, the knights' arrival will also ramp up the tension. The inner circle of the royal families both know that the real document was being hidden by the general. And even though they promised not to announce it, I'm sure there'll be some heavy suspicion laid at his feet. About time, really, isn't it? Angela came to meet him at the gates, but the Duke went straight to his quarters to rest. Mono and her go to visit and find his room empty with no sign that he even visited. After a hint from Mono, she decides to check her room and finds him lying beside the bed. There are bloodstains on his clothes, more than the other knights, and he seems to be sweating an unusual amount. For a moment, Angela thinks he's injured himself, but then the Duke wakes up, unsheathes his sword, and flips her over beneath him. Okay, I know he's a trained killer, but that position doesn't look so deadly to me. At this point, I'm starting to think REBORN is a lot smoother than we give him credit for. He came to her room because he wanted to see her right away. He feels like she's changed since he last saw her. And by the way, he's saying all this while leaning over her, brushing his thumb across her lips. Ah! He leans in very close, like very close, wondering when the two of them grew up so fast from the kids that first met one another. It really looks like they're going to kiss, and Angela even makes an attempt to say his name, but she doesn't quite manage it, so their truant romantic tension will just keep on stewing. Meanwhile, Mono has been having a rough time of it, trying to distract the general who is storming after Angela. And I mean, like, physically rough. The general is beating the poor knight black and blue when Bourbon and Frederick walk in. Before we find out how Frederick intends to punish his uncle, the story pivots and shows us how we ended up in this position. Earlier that evening, Princess Garnet was mulling over her frustrations with the Crown Prince, or more accurately, with her uncle, who almost caused her country to go to war, and was the reason she had to read her fanfic out loud. The maids are all abuzz because the princess and crown prince are going to be sharing a room tonight. At least, that's the rumor. It's actually all a bluff that got really out of hand as a result of Garnet trying to boast about her closeness with Frederick. I'm pretty sure the man himself has no idea about these arrangements. But then again, they did kiss earlier, and he didn't seem to mind it, even if he was staring at Angela half the time. So who knows? Maybe he will come and stay the night. Just to keep up appearances? Anyway, back to the brute in the corridor. When Frederick walks in on the general's rage, he orders him back to the Empire immediately, telling him to reflect on himself. The Schwandel uncle doesn't take kindly to that at all. With one foot still on Mono's limp body, he calls his nephew an insolent brat, draws his sword, and approaches the crown prince. He's saying something absurd about how it would be beneficial for their family if REBORN's right-hand man caused the prince an injury. Wait, does that mean he's actually going to hurt Frederick and frame Mono? Luckily, good old Bourbon is present, and if we know anything about that lady in disguise, it's that she won't let anyone lay a finger on her master, no matter how high their rank. The general has Bourbon up against the wall in an instant, a sword to her throat. So the crown prince pulls out a dagger of his own and holds it against his throat. Has everyone gone insane? What the heck is going on? Frederick isn't messing around. The moment he draws blood, his uncle lunges at him, striking him across the face. Bourbon gets in between them and gives the general a warning slash that has him bleeding from forehead to cheek. Jeez, this all got way too intense. All of a sudden, it's over, and the general is walking away, heading back to Rudex as commanded. And after all that, Frederick does actually enter the princess's chambers that night. Although, his visit has a sad note to it, since Garnet uses the opportunity to encourage their act, telling the prince to continue playing pretend while he's in Vestia, since they both know there's nothing between them. I can't help but feel sad for those two. They're both so lonely. If only they could see it. Unaware of all the bloodshed and drama going on elsewhere, the lovebirds have fallen asleep in slightly odd positions, just kind of gazing at one another. Rayburn wakes up first, just in time for his scholar to crash not so gracefully on top of him. Ever the klutz, our Angela. She mumbles half his name in her sleep, the most she's ever been able to say. It surprises the Duke so much that he can hardly move for a while. Then, he tries to tuck her under the blanket, and they end up holding hands while he cradles her head. Ugh, these two drive me insane. Look, he's even kissing her on the forehead. When will they just let their feelings come to light and give in already? Everyone and their mothers know they're in love by now. The next morning, Angela is inundated with presents, jewels, and gifts from the king, who's now calling her the heroine of Vestia. They even present her with a new scholar's robe, and what sounds like a job offer to stay on assisting the development of Vestia. All that for memorizing some words? Damn, our girl lucked out. Mono and Rayburn watch on as she is formally presented to the nobles of the nation and praised for single-handedly stopping the war. After that, even children on the streets recognize her. They visit a tailor shop so that Angela can fulfill her fan wish of matching clothes with the prince. They arrive to find the crown prince and princess already in line, looking very uncomfortable. Clearly, they're out for a stroll to solidify this act of theirs. Princess Garnet is surprised to see the Duke at her side and immediately suggests they all go in together for some tea. Kind of ironic, actually. The princess is only interested in the Duke and the crown prince is only interested in Angela. Thank God the tailor comes out in time to break the awkward silence, inviting the girls to take a look at some of her private designs. Sure, leave the brothers alone. I'm sure that won't backfire at all. It gets just as weird between the girls too, because Garnet is intent on finding a gift for Rayburn and starts asking all these questions about what kind of fashion he likes and what colors would work on him. It doesn't take long for Garnet to notice how much attention Angela has paid to his style and preferences. I mean, you'd have to be blind as a bat not to notice the way she dotes on him. She suddenly makes a big deal about finding a gift for Frederick, and even threatens to buy out the whole store. Meanwhile, the crown prince is being shown an array of priceless gems and jewels that would make a lovely gift to Garnet. The crowds watch in delight as he fits her with a gorgeous necklace. All the while, the princess whispers that her father will pay, so he should just pretend for now. The only good thing about their sad performance is that it takes some of the attention away from Rayburn and Angela. Somehow, despite the girls going through the entire store, they didn't manage to get Rayburn's matching outfit just yet. So Angela requests one last fan date to find the perfect fit. Of course, when it comes to his scholar, he just can't say no. I'm afraid this story is currently on hiatus, so that's the end for now. When there are more updates available, you can be sure we'll cover them right away so we can bring the next part straight to our viewers. For now, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more recap content. And thanks for watching, guys!